A joint investigation by the Ontario Provincial Police and U.S. officials has led to the largest seizure of handguns and assault rifles in the province's history.
Illegal firearms like these are used in violent crimes such as robberies, carjackings, home invasions, intimidation, extortion, and homicides.
According to police, 274 illegal firearms were seized as part of the investigation. It involved the U.S. Homeland Security as well. 168 of the weapons were taken in the United States before they could be smuggled into Canada. Another 106 made it into the province but were seized in Ontario. And joining me now is Chris Lewis, CTV News public safety analyst and former OPP commissioner. And thank you very much, Chris, for joining us today.
Anytime, Roger.
This is the largest gun bust in Ontario history. Are you surprised at this number that we're seeing, 274 illegal firearms, or is this something that it happens and we're just catching it now?
Well, I think it really speaks to the reality of the number of firearms that are coming into this country from the United States. And but not to downplay in any way significant work by the OPP and the various partners in the Provincial Weapons Enforcement Unit and U.S. authorities. That's fantastic. A lot of guns taken off the street. But it's a huge issue. It's facing the entire country, not just Ontario. And we need more and more of this, and we need the RCMP to be engaged as well. And due to some funding issues and resource issues, they're not as engaged as most of the members would like to be. But it's a huge, significant bust.
And it is frightening when you look. They said a lot of those guns had been either had possibly, I guess, bump stocks and had extra large clips. Some of them have been converted to automatic. Frightening.
Frightening. And some of the magazines they seized, overcapacity magazines, totally illegal. One of them was 50-round magazine, many of them 30-round magazines. I mean, that's frightening stuff, particularly when you look at some of these weapons being altered in a way that they could fire multiple shots with one pull of the trigger, which has been outlawed in Canada for years. So that's pretty scary stuff, and scary for the police and scary for the public.
How important was it that Homeland Security was involved in this? I mean, the weapons are going out, and we're trying to stop it from coming in here, but they were involved as well. How important is it to see that?
Very important, because the sources are within the United States. We heard in the press conference that many of these guns came all the way from Florida. But the U.S. has always been the main source, and the ATF and Homeland Security of the United States have always been major players. The OPP have had people seconded to the ports of entry in Buffalo and Detroit for a number of years to work with their best unit. It's called Border Enforcement Team, which is fantastic. So they've always been major players, and this really shows, and it should show all Canadians, that the police agencies in Canada and the U.S. agencies are working hard to do the right thing, to keep people safe and keep guns out of here. But it's so big, they require so many more resources to do it, but that's expensive and difficult for taxpayers to accept.
And how do we stop it? I mean, there are so many entry points. There's such easy access to weapons in the States. How do we stop them coming in?
Well, it's exactly what's happening right now, Roger. The agencies working together. We just need more of that. But policing has other demands right across Canada. And so, and it's expensive to run a police service, including the RCMP, obviously, and Canada Border Protection Service. They have to work together all the time, but they need the support of government to do that. And we're not always seeing that on the federal level. Provinces and municipalities are doing all they can to make a difference, but it needs to be much bigger than that, continuing to work with U.S. authorities, of course.
And what do you think, I guess it was about 2/3 of them were seized in the U.S. and then a third up here, roughly, give or take.
Right.
Any reason for that, do you think? Were they letting them go through to see if they could follow the trail, so to speak?
They probably were in some cases. Sometimes they call it a controlled delivery with drugs or firearms, where they follow it from the source right through the border and on to where it's actually going to be delivered. And with undercover officers involved, we heard that was happening in a number of cases with these organized crime groups. It's a dangerous way of practice, because if you lose control of the surveillance and you lose a gun, now you got another gun on the streets. But obviously very effective use of law enforcement officers and agents and informants and undercover people. And so they managed to pull it off, and it's fantastic.
Now, it was a large seizure, but does it make a big dent in guns on the streets here?
Well, I think it does. And I mean, it's hundreds of guns. I mean, that's scary stuff. And a lot of them were seized in the U.S., but they're on their way here, didn't get here. So that's a good thing from a preventative perspective. So ultimately, it makes a dent, but that has to continue. And there's lots of investigations going at any given time. So it's not over yet. There'll be more and more like this. We just have to keep the momentum going.
Okay, Chris, thank you as always for joining us.
Thank you, Roger. Have a good day.
Chris Lewis, CTV News public safety analyst and former OPP commissioner.